Shavin, just a question to ask you before we get into the episode. Do you believe in witchcraft by chance? Just witchcraft, teams getting cursed, I don't know, somebody having some kind of grudge against someone and then, cursing them to not have any any sort of positive result.
I think
Just
personally
out of
for me,
curiosity.
personally, on a sporting sense, this month has been horrible for me. There is only one team, from this is not F1 related, but there's only one team from all the teams I support that doesn't let me down, and that is the Golden State Warriors. Now I said it on grandstand, so they're going to lose the championship
So
this
they're
year.
they'll probably go
Yeah.
bankrupt. They can't get relegated, so they probably go bankrupt and can't support a team. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, Shavin, I need to thank you for showing immense bravery and coming on this episode just minutes after Arsenal lost to Man City and potentially lost the Premier League title with it. You've shown um, some great bravery over the years in grandstand to come after tough results. But yeah, we are heading into Baku and it's sprint weekend. And if you're an F1 fan, you would have noticed that there's quite a bit of a stir going on right now with the whole sprint weekend setup and what's happening. F1 has come out and released a new sprint format, a sprint weekend format rather, and it has caused a bit of a debate amongst F1 fans. There are people who find it quite interesting. I feel like most F1 fans are against it and feel like it's just a bit excessive. We are just going to have a conversation on it and see whether it could be something interesting for Formula One or not. Whether it's just shenanigans that could be avoided. So welcome to the Grandstand podcast, and let's get right into it. So, before we get into the conversation of the sprint format, we need to explain to all of you, our viewers, what exactly is going to happen during the sprint weekend. So, we have six sprint weekends scheduled for this 2023 season, and it kicks off, as I said, in Baku. Just to explain how it's going to work, so of course, we have the usual Grand Prix weekend, which starts off on Friday. And for the sprint weekend, this is what has been explained. We don't know whether this is going to continue for all six sprint weekends or whether it's just for Baku. I think it's supposed to be for all six. I'm not really sure, but we'll check on that. But on Friday, we'll have one practice session as opposed to the usual two that you have. So it's just one. And right after, you have the qualifying session. And this qualifying session is for the Grand Prix on Sunday, not for the sprint. The Grand Prix on Sunday will be decided. The grid for that Grand Prix will be decided on Friday. So obviously, whoever comes first there gets pole position as well. Not the winner of the sprint. Pole position goes to the one who comes first in qualifying on Friday. Saturday is Sprint Saturday. That's what they call it. And
Yes.
you have what they call a sprint shootout, which is basically a shorter qualifying session to determine the grid for the sprint race, which will take place later on that day. And for the sprint shootout, you have mandatory tires and you have allocated times, just like on a qualifying session. So you'll have Q1, which will be 12 minutes, and all the cars need to run the medium tire. Q2, which will be 10 minutes, again, they need to run the medium tire. And then Q3 will be 8 minutes, where the cars will need to run the soft tires. And once the grid is set up, you will have the sprint race, like usual sprint weekends. And the point system remains just as it was last year, with 8 points for the winner, all the way down to 1 point for the person coming in eighth place. And then on Sunday, you have the usual Grand Prix, and the usual way things happen during a Grand Prix weekend. Shavin, a lot of information
Yes.
and a bit of a weekend that could see I don't know, very polarizing opinions, a lot of debates, a lot of frustration being vented by teams, by drivers as well, not just the fans. Of course, they need to be comfortable with this. I feel like some drivers are not really comfortable. Case in point, Max Verstappen, current defending world champion. He was not really comfortable with the direction Formula One is headed in. So you're an F1 fan, longer than me for sure. You've been watching F1 for quite some time. What's your take on this whole sprint weekend shenanigan? I can't remember what your take was when we did our very first Formula One episode on this podcast. It was back in 2020. I can't really remember what your take was because we discussed this, the whole
Yeah.
sprint thing
Yeah.
back then. I remember. I can't remember what you thought of it back then, but you've seen it now for 2 seasons. What's your take on this whole sprint weekend?
Okay, so before I give my thoughts on this, I think we need to look at what exactly the purpose of this sprint new format is, and that is clearly so F1 obviously is it's moving towards entertainment. It is entertainment at the end of the day, right? And Liberty Media, they're trying to get more viewers, more I don't know if casual viewers or more well less hardcore viewers to people who don't watch practice sessions to keep to watch all the sessions to watch Friday through Sunday, right? That is their point because obviously they get more viewers and that is what generates revenue for them. So in terms of, I think from what I can see, what they've done is they've added qualifying now to uh, they've added the Grand Prix
Friday?
qualifying to Friday, and then now they've added sort of a standalone event, which is the sprint weekend to Saturday, and then you have your main Grand Prix event on Sunday. So clearly, what they're trying to do is they're trying to get people, they're trying to get more casual fans, if you will, to sort of watch all 3 days of the race weekend. And I think certainly that will be accomplished, I think, because this is something new, and when something new comes in, people always want to watch it and see what exactly happens. But my view on it is, I think that um they're also promoting. It's the thing with F1 is, I think, whenever they have this concept, they try to sort of shove the concept down the viewer's throat, saying, this is going to bring more
Mm.
excitement, this is going to bring more racing. This, like, the point of this is to make it more exciting, to make it to see more. I think the exact words they used were to see more attacking, driving, or whatever. So my main issue with this, which is I think a very obvious issue, which is something we spoke about before the episode started, also, is the fact that removing keeping this as a standalone event completely removes any incentive for drivers from probably 10 to 20 to even put any effort into racing, because one thing, they're putting their car in danger. uh, this is the cost cap era where you can't afford to damage your car, and there are no points incentives for them. Like, there is no real incentive for, like, if, like, are you going to see Logan Sargent and Nick DeVries and Lando? Sorry, that was a McLaren joke.
That was not. That was not a mistake, was it?
Are you gonna see Logan
To be fair,
Sargent?
at least Lando will be in the race. He won't be in the barriers.
Yeah.
I am
uh,
stupid. I'm
but-
just joking. I'm just
yeah.
joking.
But I mean, this, it completely removes any incentive for the drivers to actually, I don't want to say put in effort, because um, obviously every driver wants to put in effort and wants to race and wants to be the best, which, I mean, I have no doubt. But it removes any incentive for the drivers to actually focus on this, because why would you, right? Because Sunday is the day that you can actually score the most amount of points. Yes, you can score probably like 1 or 2 points. Realistically, it's not, I mean, it's very unlikely that one of those drivers are going to get into the top 5, top 6. So I think that for me is, like, obviously the central issue with this whole standalone event. I think they're obviously experimenting. I don't think this will be the final format, or I highly doubt this will be the final format for the sprint going forward in the future. They're obviously trying something new, and they're trying it in Baku. The one thing is that Baku is obviously a track which is a bit more racy than other tracks, and I think you can race, you can overtake, and we've seen some interesting races. So I think they're banking on that as well. That's why they've introduced the format in this track. That's what I believe. But personally, I'm not a fan of the standard event, because while, yeah, it does bring a bit of excitement. I don't know. It's not something that it's not something that really excites me. What, like, going into a Grand Prix weekend. But what about you? What are your thoughts?
Well, I don't know. The sprint does generate some sort of excitement, but like you said, it's just that whole thing of incentive, and I wanted to get into that because, as a fan, maybe you can see more racing and stuff like that. But
Yeah,
it's just the incentive because you take the sprint from last year. There was a reason to actually race in the sprint because you make up your positions
exactly.
that position is the position you start in the Grand Prix,
Exactly.
and that could heavily determine the result for the final race, which is the most important one, like you said. So to have it as a standalone event, it I don't know. Maybe we don't know. It's something they're trying. Maybe obviously at the start, every decision has its critics. Take the Halo for example.
Yeah.
Everyone everyone under the sun thought it was the worst thing to ever be brought into Formula One,
Yeah.
and see how many lives it has saved.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it just kind of seems kind of redundant for teams. I was going to get into that because we need to look at the team's point of view as well. Yes, the fans are important; they bring the money to the sport, but then the teams are the ones actually taking part. And you already have this cost cap, which is good for the sport. It
Yeah.
kind of brings the field close together. And then you have your allocations. You have like your engine parts. You can only use three of a certain, like your ICE or your NGUK or whatever. You have
Yeah.
allocations, and of course throughout the season they are good. It's normal. It's basic. I don't know, physics. They have their wear and tear. They get overused over a long period of time, and you need to try and save them as much as possible, because if not, they're going to just incur grid penalties.
Yeah.
So in a case like that, and especially one thing that needs to be mentioned is the fact that there are teams that don't have money as much as big of amount as some of the other teams. Case in point, you take Haas.
Yeah.
They don't have all the money in the world. They are cutting down on their pit wall to use that money to use the money for development. So in a case like that, I'm not saying Haas are the slowest car. There are other cars. I think the
Yeah.
AlphaTauri is slower, obviously, but
McLaren.
you know yeah, McLaren probably, but no, they're not. They finished. They scored more points than Ferrari, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Look at Australia. Uh, uh, but they beat both Ferraris, I think. Yeah, in a slow car. It's kind of sad, but uh, no. But yeah, as I was saying, the incentive, because unless some big mistake happens in qualifying, you'd have most likely you'd have Red Bull, Merck, Ferrari, and Aston Martin locking up the front half of the grid, which is the 8 places where the points
Yeah.
are allocated for. And it's unless the only teams that probably have a chance are probably Alpine and McLaren, if they manage to get some kind of setup thing right. Haas maybe an outside chance, but I don't see that happening. So from 9 onwards, let's get 9 and 10 out, maybe 9 and 10. You see 11 to 20 just going around the track for no reason. I mean, they're not really going to make up places, and there's no point in them fighting each other as well, because it's not like they're making up places
Yeah.
for the Grand
Exactly.
Prix. You get it, right? It's
Exactly.
it's like, what's the point? They might as well save their parts and use it for the actual Grand Prix.
Yeah.
You know. So yeah, I don't know whether the removing the incentive of the sprint, setting up the grid, for Sunday, would help Formula One in terms of the teams. And like I said, if the drivers are not really happy about the situation, is it worth it? Because they're the ones who are bringing you the entertainment. And Max has clearly said, he's not very much a fan of what's happening. And if it continues, he might just, you won't see him, in the distant future. So I think, yeah, that's the main question, whether teams will find it necessary, because obviously it'll be good for teams like Red Bull. I mean, forget Red Bull. Okay, fine. Red Bull are probably out of the. I don't think anyone's. I mean, unless we'll probably get into that later
Yeah.
on in another episode. But uh, in case they have the reliability issues or whatever, if that's sorted, probably no one will catch Red Bull. But between Aston Martin, Mercedes, and Ferrari, for them, this could be interesting because they're fighting for points and every point will be valuable. But beyond that, is it really worth it? Trying to make positions knowing that you're not going to get the maximum you can fight for is like 8, which is 1 point. And if you know that your rivals are out of the pitch as well to get points, is there really a point in you trying to fight for that 1 point? So yeah, it
I
is
think.
questionable, but
Yeah. I
yeah,
think there is one there is one argument I guess you can make, which is where the debate comes into whether this is entertainment or whether this is sport, and that is the
yeah,
fact that if this does in fact generate more revenue for Liberty Media, and if it does generate more revenue for F1, then that is the revenue that is ultimately redistributed amongst the, I mean, that is what is ultimately, going to go back to the teams, right? So there is sort of, I guess, a revenue incentive to the teams, but that's when the line is sort of blurred in the sense, if they're trying to give it, if they're trying to, make it entertaining, or if they're trying to keep the purity of the sport and make it more better racing. So I guess that's a real question that maybe F1 needs to answer, whether they are trying to make it better racing. Because clearly, I think another, I mean, just to add to the point, I think one interesting example is MotoGP, because MotoGP has brought in, um, for any of the viewers who don't know, MotoGP has brought in the sprint race format as well, and that is implemented for every single race that MotoGP has. Now, some riders like it, some riders don't, but there's a clear difference between MotoGP and F1, and there is the fact that it's a lot easier to pass a bike than it is to pass an F1 car, because these F1 cars, they're very big and it's not the
Ah,
easiest
wide.
cars to race.
Yeah.
Yeah, very wide, and it's a lot easier to pass someone on a bike. And sprint shootouts, to be honest, suit MotoGP a bit more, because like riders are able to pass more. Um, so it really boils down to what exactly, I guess, Liberty Media's goal is, whether it's to just generate more revenue or whether it is to make better racing, I think.
Yeah, it is. I think it it boils down to that, as you said. I think Stefano Domenicali is trying quite a few things. He's suggested getting rid of practice sessions and all that.
Yeah.
Some people like that, some people don't. Again, um, clearly he's trying to experiment. Clearly feels like something needs to be changed. I don't know why he feels like that. I've not really read much into it. I don't know whether they feel like they are not getting the revenue they need to get. But clearly, there are some changes in progress. We never know. I mean, the sprint might just work out, maybe
Yeah.
some for Liberty Media. But what I feel is like if the drivers and the teams are not really happy about it, we don't know what they feel, what they're feeling right now. We'll probably get to know tomorrow. Yeah, today's Wednesday, right? Yeah, tomorrow, day after, you will get to know what they actually think about this whole thing. But I don't know. It just we'll just need to see how it pans out during this weekend. Give it a
Yeah.
chance, see how it goes, and yeah, see whether it actually brings about some kind of exciting racing.
Or maybe F1 should
But
just listen to my suggestion, since F1 listens to this
yes,
podcast.
I was going to ask you. Wait, just before I was going to ask you, like, for you to give you your stage, like, what are other solutions that
I
F1 could
think
possibly implement?
I think
I have none, so I'm going to leave it to you.
so, since Stefano Domenicali, since we know that he listens to this podcast, I think
Of course, like he
yeah.
contacts us on a daily basis. So yeah, but doesn't
Since
take
we
the
know,
advice, but he contacts us.
yeah,
Yes.
since we know he listens to this podcast, I think, no, I mean, in all seriousness, I mean, I'm no F1 expert or engineer or anything, but I think just one interesting idea that I've seen being thrown around is this idea of the reverse grid. And I know I told you, and you're person not a huge fan of it either. And I know that certain
No,
drivers
I
like,
get the. I would just say I get the because the drivers aren't really a big fan. I think, and
yeah,
I get
yeah,
their perspective, the drivers and their teams.
yeah,
But
and
yeah, go
I
ahead.
understand that as well. But I think if the goal is to make it better racing, to make, I don't know, for me, what I can think from better racing is either you need to make the cars more equal, which is what they're trying to indirectly do with this cost cap, but clearly it doesn't work. Because, and obviously that's a different story, credit to Red Bull, they have a probably the best car designing engineer in the sport. That's a different story. But
Yeah.
um it's a my point is, if they're trying to make it equal, either they need to make it equal spec, which I don't think is the right solution, or they need to add something different, sort of a handicap like the reverse grid, where they start, maybe every race is you start from sort of your position in the championship. So if you're first, you start 20th, and if you're second, you start 19th, and so on. And qualifying could be just qualifying, where you do the fastest lap, like whoever does the fastest lap in qualifying gets like 1 point, or you just do do qualifying to see who the fastest car is, something like that. So, and you do the reverse grid. So it's just a suggestion, obviously,
But
like,
Ferrari still starts on pole, no, because they need all the help they can get. That's
no, I mean, I'm not saying this because like Ferrari is doing really badly this season. I'm just saying, just given the last 10 years
Give us a break.
of given the last 10 years of racing, aside from 2021, I think. I mean, obviously we've had like the Rosberg, Rosberg and
Hamilton.
Hamilton, and we had like Vettel and Hamilton a few good battles, but largely I think the teams that have won the championship have been quite dominant. So, and Red Bull this year, this seems really harsh on Red Bull because they've done a really good job, and like I think all the Red Bull fans listening to this will immediately stop listening to this episode. But
Shut us
my,
down.
but I'm just saying I think that reverse grid is just one suggestion. It's completely different from the sprint format, and I don't know if they'll ever do it because, like you said, like guys like Hamilton have completely shut it down. But it's just something that if they want to make better racing in this era, it seems like an option they should consider. Just my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it could be interesting for sure. There's just the thing where, I think this was asked from Hamilton, Vettel, and
Yeah,
Leclerc sometime back 2019.
yeah,
And they were, I agree. I think, you know, it's not easy developing a F1 car. There's a lot of work that
yeah,
goes in, a lot of money. And when a team comes out, forget, regardless of whether you have the money or not, it's not all just about the money. I mean, AlphaTauri I would say they have decent money. I mean, there's Red Bull's team, but they're really struggling at this point.
yeah,
You do the work, you develop a car that's crazy good, and the reward is you start from the back of the field. Some
yes,
You can understand why some
yeah,
engineers, who put in, the late nights, trying to develop a crazy car would feel a bit, you know,
yeah, yeah.
feel a bit negative towards
True, true.
that idea. So that's the only reason I think why people are not a massive fan of the reverse grid. But it could, if again, if there's no massive harm to the final result, maybe that's something they could try, and just see how it works. But yeah, um, another solution. I mean, another possible solution just to spice things up could be the one lap shootout. For qualifying with sprint or something
Yeah,
that there's a bunch of
I
things
think
that have
that's
been thrown
interesting.
around. Yeah, it could be, and I think you gave a very nice one where everyone just gets one lap. Everyone
Yeah,
on the grid just gets one lap on the
yeah,
softs, which could be crazy. You have to be on it. But yeah, there are quite a few things being thrown around like suggestions. But it all goes back to the fact that Stefan Domenicali wants to change up the format of Grand Prix weekend. Why that is, maybe there are few things that they feel like they need to improve in order to get more revenue. Um, Only time will tell. But this is what we have. I think F1 fans will give it a chance to see how it goes, and
agree.
yeah, and if they don't, I think they'll make a decision to scrap it. If it lives, it lives. But that's it regarding the sprint, and it's going to be a short episode because we had quite a few long episodes recently. And thank you very much for watching. But just to treat you guys, we give you a
Yeah.
short one. But just before we leave, let's just look at the weekend quickly. And Shavin, what do you think is going to happen? Of course, barring any reliability failures, should be another Red Bull one too. But how do you see it going?
I think, yeah, like I said, barring reliability failures and barring any massive upgrades that any team are going to bring, I think this,
Which could be possible. I think it should be mentioned. Sorry to cut your shine, but
yeah,
I think Merck will possibly bring a completely different car. I think that
yeah,
was the plan, which you got to feel for Merck, and especially the W13 and the W14, like W13/W14, like they're more or less the same concept. If that car could talk, even the car wouldn't know what it could actually do and what it couldn't, because at the start of that last season, it was struggling with porpoising, but towards the end, it became a very good car.
yeah,
It was decent, not enough against Red Bull, but pretty fast. And they decided to stick with it. And they started off the season again with not bad results, but not great. And then they turn up in Australia and, are easily the second fastest car. And, holding Red Bull back was quite some time. I think Russell
yeah,
was, clearly on the pace. But I think they've made the decision to switch, I think, from the concept and probably go. I don't know. We'll probably see in Baku what the Merc looks like, but they probably made the commitment to go down the Red Bull route or a different route. Ferrari should have some upgrades as well, Aston Martin as well. So you will see the. I think we're going to start. We are starting to see the development race, commencing from here, and
There's another team bringing in
trying to
upgrades in
bridge
Baku
that.
as well, who might be fighting for the
Who,
championship soon.
I
McLaren.
don't know who you're talking about. Yeah, yeah, of course. Bro. Currently fourth. They went from what 10th to fourth in the space of one race. Legends. You know, can
But
anyone say that?
no, I
No,
mean, I
but the
think, yeah,
development race is going to
yeah,
be because they had a 3 week break. So obviously they've been working hard for sure to bring developments, and you will see. Who knows? Maybe the second, third, and fourth teams might have somewhat bridged the gap towards Red Bull, but then Red Bull probably will also bring the upgrades. So interesting to see.
yeah, yeah, definitely. I think it, I mean, not to talk about it too much. I think we'll probably talk about this in a different episode. But I have a feeling that Merc by the end of this season is gonna probably be the car that bridges the gap to Red Bull the most. I just have a feeling just from seeing what they've done over the first three races and seeing, because the team, another thing is, I think for the drivers, they are not under any pressure to challenge for the title or challenge for the championship or anything like that. No one's expecting them to do that this season. So I
Yeah,
think, given all of that, obviously I know that, I mean, Lewis Hamilton wants to win his eighth title, but I just think the car is in a development phase right now, and I think I feel like, given where the team is and given how competent that team is, I feel like by the end of this season they'll probably be the second fastest car and they'll be the closest to Red Bull, ahead of
probably.
Ferrari and ahead of Aston as well. But yeah, just to give my
Probably.
predictions for Baku, I think I'm gonna say, in line with what I said, I'm gonna say Max, George, Checo.
Okay. By the way, I want to apologize to Checo in advance for ending his championship run even before it started by saying he's going to win Australia. And the grandstand curse, catching
Yeah.
after him. I still want to say another Checo win because he is the king of the streets.
Mm.
But I'm going to go Fernando because
Okay.
you don't have a repeat winner in Baku. It's
Okay.
always been it's been a different winner every single time. So
Yeah.
I say the Red Bulls take each other out again. Like in
Okay.
2018.
Hopefully.
I'm just kidding. I don't know. But I'm maybe Fernando win. It could
Okay.
be number 33. Like this whole with this whole Taylor Swift whatever nonsense that's going on, nonsense, but
Yeah.
rumors.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Alonso to finally get win number 33. Checo second and Max third. I still don't know why I'm like on this Checo beating Max thing, but
Okay.
there you are.
Fair enough.
So there you have it. So that's our conversation on the whole sprint weekend and whatever is happening there. Have a good race weekend. Hope you guys enjoyed, and hopefully Ferrari can cross the finish line this time. No penalties, um, and they get some points because I think they need it. It's a shame because that car is pretty decent and it's not getting the points it deserves. But yeah, we will catch you straight after. I think we have quite a few races to cover, and
Yeah.
we'll be on it. Hope to see you guys soon. Enjoy race weekend, and until then, it's Shavin and myself signing out.
See you.
All right, how long?
I know, solid.